Nachi free.
I was almost going to vote for Donald Trump until I saw the last presidential debate. And that's when it dawned on me once again that no, Donald Trump should not be president of the United States. And with that said, I have no intention of voting for this clearly corrupt, deceptive wench, Hillary Clinton. I was going to call her a cunt, but I want to keep this classy. Now, I've been on the fence about whether to vote for Trump or Gary Johnson for quite some time because I really don't want to see Hillary Clinton as our president. And I'm well aware that the possibility of Gary Johnson winning the election is 0-0. And so I was thinking of voting for Trump to decrease the chances of Hillary winning the election. And as great as it would be for our nation to finally usher in its first female president, I so wish it wasn't her. I don't think she's going to solve any of our problems. Instead, she's going to perpetuate them. That's how these people stay in power. If there was nothing to fix, career politicians like Hillary Clinton would become obsolete. Despite all her empty promises in the last presidential debate, I'm willing to bet $5 that she's going to add even more to the national debt. Healthcare costs are going to be even more expensive under the Affordable Care Act. Public school education is going to continue to be held hostage by the teachers union, and I really don't see how she's going to improve the economy or unemployment. All her talk about green jobs is going to end up awash like the dismal failure that was Solyndra. Which, by the way, this arrogant knucklehead couldn't even name that company in the first debate. Why? Because Trump prides himself in being unprepared and just winging it. And I'm sorry, but it seems to me that the presidency of our country is not the same as improv comedy on an open mic night stage. And that's why I just can't vote for Donald Trump. Not because so many of these misinforming douchebags on mainstream news channels have desperately tried to accuse him of racism or sexism or whatever other ism is politically in vogue among these pretentious cunts. Sorry, but they deserve to be called cunts. No, the main reason why I can't vote for Trump is because of his economic policies, which he can't even clearly defend on a debate stage given his penchant for winging it on the spot.
The Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says, Secretary Clinton, under your plan, debt would rise to 86% of GDP over the next 10 years. Mr. Trump, under your plan, they say it would rise to 105% of GDP over the next 10 years. Why are both of you ignoring this problem? Mr. Trump, you go first.
Well, I say they're wrong because I'm going to create tremendous jobs. And we're bringing GDP from really 1%, which is what it is now. And if she got in, it'll be less than 0. But we're bringing it from 1% up to 4%. And I actually think we can go higher than 4%. I think you can go to 5 or 6%. And if we do, you don't have to bother asking your question because we have a tremendous machine. We will have created a tremendous economic machine once again.
Everything is tremendous with this guy. And it's precisely because he's a successful businessman that I thought he'd be able to know what he was talking about the economy. But vague, rambling answers like that, where he offers empty promises with no real specifics, I find to be as off-putting as petty, vindictive comments like these.
What we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund by making sure that we...
Trump is such a cunt. Actually, he's a cunt. And by the way, I agree Hillary is a nasty woman. I just don't agree with hearing such remarks from someone who could become the leader of the free world and commander-in-chief of one of the most powerful armed forces on the planet, whose every word on the world stage can have incalculable consequences. Anywho, despite all this, it's interesting to see the psychology of people who are definitely voting for either Hillary or Trump now that we're this close to the finish line. And there isn't a single person I know who's voting for Hillary or Trump because they genuinely believe in either candidate. They're voting for them because they believe that either one of them is the lesser of two evils. In the end, you're still voting for evil. Though evil might be too strong a word for Hillary or Trump. But nonetheless, that's why I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson.
Standing up there for the whole debate and not saying anything.
Now that guy is clearly not evil. By the way, for anyone who wants to call him stupid, misinformed, or whatever other bullshit you might be parroting from what you've heard on mainstream news channels from either the left or the right, be it MSNBC or Fox News, or the Drudge Report, which I love, or the Huffington Post, which I despise. For anyone who wants to assume that they're smarter than Gary Johnson, unless you've been a two-term governor and or a self-made millionaire who started his business as a handyman, you might want to check your IQ first. Gary Johnson is not an idiot. Neither is Trump, and there's nothing stupid about this evil cunt. There, I said it. She's evil. And that's the interesting thing, to witness so many people, particularly family and friends, trying to convince me that a vote for Gary Johnson is really a vote for Hillary. As a matter of fact, the other day, a cousin of mine sent me this text.
Only you can prevent Hillary.
And I get it from the other side too. For any relatives who are voting for Hillary, they have the same paralyzing fear that a vote for Gary Johnson is really a vote for Trump. And this is why we end up with these false choices that no one wants to vote for or believe in. Because people think that they can second guess our democracy the same way that people think that they can second guess the stock market. And by the way, there's even more choices than Hillary, Trump, or Gary Johnson. There's Jill Stein, who is basically Bernie Sanders, but with a vagina, and a PhD from Harvard, but whatever, I'm still not voting for her. There's actually two more candidates. There's Darrell Castle and Rocky De La Fuente. Now, it's one thing for family and friends to try and tell me who to vote for. I don't mind that. I love talking politics, and I've learned how not to let those conversations turn into arguments. I'll never allow a mere political opinion to come in between me and the people that I love and respect, or even strangers, because you don't solve anything by insulting people and much less calling them cunts. Unless, of course, they're already in positions of power or in mainstream news outlets and you know you're never going to meet them face to face. Then it's perfectly okay to call these people cunts. Because it's a whole other phenomenon to hear people who can actually influence others to engage in hyperbolic scare tactics. And it's a real shame when I hear from some of my favorite authors and YouTubers. One of my favorite authors, Sam Harris, is clearly going to vote for Hillary Clinton. But I have to disagree with him that Donald Trump is going to run civilization off a cliff. This notion that Donald Trump is going to cause a nuclear war if he becomes president is ridiculous. That he might usher in an economic recession with vague policy prescriptions and talk about trade and protectionism, that's a scary possibility. But again, that's nowhere near driving civilization off a cliff. Then I hear one of my other favorite YouTubers, Stefan Molyneux, argue the complete opposite, but with practically the same conclusion. That if Hillary Clinton becomes president, it's the end of Western civilization as we know it. Granted, I don't think Hillary's going to be doing our military any favors by continuing to meddle in the Middle East with Syria, Iraq, Iran, and even Russia. But I highly doubt that our country's going to become like Cuba or North Korea under her presidency. Look, I'm no historian, or military expert, or political analyst, or anything of note for that matter. I'm just another rube on YouTube espousing his concerned opinion about the direction of our country and exercising my freedom of expression to the fullest. Our nation has survived much worse. This constitutional democratic republic has survived a civil war in the 1800s, 2 world wars with a Great Depression in between during the first half of the 1900s, and in the age of the internet, we've even survived Y2K. Remember that end of civilization bullshit back in 1999? The bottom line is this. The world is not going to careen out of orbit under a Hillary or Trump presidency, so I wish people would stop trying to scare others into voting for their candidate of choice. It doesn't help to tell anyone who they're supposed to vote for, and much less trying to make someone feel guilty that if whatever happens afterwards, it's their fault. Right, so if Hillary or Trump becomes president, it's all my fault for having voted for what I truly believe in. And by the way, I don't even agree with everything Gary Johnson says, but I agree with his core principles, namely freedom. He's the only candidate with a slogan I can stand by, live free, as opposed to make America great again. It's already great with or without you cunt. Or stronger together. Yeah, whatever, you divisive, polarizing bitch. Which is why I don't see voting for what I believe in as a wasted vote. As far as I'm concerned, I see my vote for Gary Johnson as a tiny little monkey wrench that I'm gonna throw into this massive machine that I have no real control over. I wanna send a message with my vote that I will not stand for this false divide created by the Democratic and Republican parties that did everything they could to limit our options, especially when it came to these last 3 pathetically uninformative presidential debates. For anyone out there who does have the reach to influence thousands, if not millions of people, stop it with the scare tactics and the misinformation. That's why I would never dare tell anyone who they should vote for. Voting is a personal statement of your beliefs, and it is imperative that we don't silence people's ideas, even if they are religious or socialist horseshit. Freedom isn't free in this world, and to guilt people for exercising that hard-earned right is wrong. Good thing my candidate of choice is such a hard sell that I can't even convince certain libertarians to vote for him. However, for any family and friends, continue sending me all these hokey text messages about Hillary and Trump. At this point, it's not going to change my mind, but at least I could use them in my videos, which is why I'm going to end this one on a positive note. Don't let anyone guilt you, and much less scare you out of voting for what you truly believe in. We are not a nation of cowards, which is why we have the right to vote for whoever we individually choose in the first place. Thanks for watching.
Homegrown!